Hi, my name is Dawn, and I am a previous owner of Victory Velo Bike Shop. I'm an avid mountain biker and horseback rider. I've lived in Auburn for 35 years and have used all the trails. Not quite as long mountain biking, but just as long horse riding, doing endurance. This is the endurance capital of the world. I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience being a mountain biker on our local multi-use trails. It's wonderful. I've had really good experiences with horses, horse riders. I have come to the conclusion that when I decide to go out on the trails on my mountain bike, I feel I need to be very respectful of the other trail users and be very aware of horseback riders in particular. I've found the communication between a bike rider and a horse rider is very crucial. Every horse and every horse rider that I come across has very different needs with their horse at that time. So I've found that if I pull off on the side of the trail and I communicate with the rider, I instantly say, "Hello, is there anything you need for me to do?" And they will generally communicate. What I don't do is I don't pull over on the trail and sit silently and wait for them to pass. I have found doing that and being a horse rider, the horses, when they see an object on the side of the trail, they don't know that it's a person and a bike. So I've found that being vocal and verbal when I come upon a horse rider is the number one thing to start communication with the horseback rider. The horseback rider, depending on what level or if they're on a very new horse to the trail, they need different things. And the communication can be brief and it can be everlasting, especially for the horse rider. It's very important to make the horse and the rider feel safe with bikes and whatever you choose to do on the trail. My encounters have been the polar opposite. I get either the super nervous horse rider and the horse is nervous, or I get the people like me who are kind of like, "No, go ahead, like do a wheelie by me. I want my horse to encounter everything." So my experience is being a horse rider and meeting bikes on the trail. It's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I'm not going to say I've had really, really bad experiences. I believe the experiences that I've had have just been from folks on bicycles that are just not prepared to meet horses on the trail, or they just don't understand the protocol, the etiquette. They don't understand horses at all. That horses have a brain, bikes don't. The only experience that I had that I got hurt, and it wasn't a bike, it was a bike rider, but he was coming towards me. We were meeting each other, but unfortunately there was enough brush and things that we couldn't see each other until, and I'm training for endurance at the time, so I'm going just as fast as that person was on the bicycle, and we just kind of met around a corner, and it spooked my horse enough to where, she did a 180, and as we turn around, I see that there's the cliff down to the river. And so at that point, I made the split-second decision to bail off of my horse. And I quickly got up and gathered myself. I wasn't hurt. It startled my horse. It startled the bike rider as well. And it was nobody's fault, but I just want to share that things happen with bikes and horses that are unexpected. And it was just the trail not being groomed enough. And I just remember I got back on my horse, and I very kindly smiled at the bike rider, and I said, please don't tell my husband that you saw me out here and that I fell off because of a bike rider. So that's really the only one that sticks out in my mind. Remember that horses are flight animals. They are predisposed to, at a split of a second, if there is some movement that they catch out of the corner of their eye or something that's coming at them and they don't recognize it, they don't recognize the sound, the sight, their instinct is to turn and run. And it's a big animal. And it's hard for equestrians to get a horse to stop or calm down after they've hit that. So I believe that if mountain bikers could just slow down slightly if they're on multi-use trails, and just be aware that you will see a horse at some point in your journey, especially Hidden Falls, out here at the Overlook. You'll run into a horse, and that's what I mean about responsibility when you go out on your bike on the trail. You have to understand that there are animals with people on their backs, and it's a different scenario. So if you treat that you treat the rider and the horse with respect, the horse will then, and the rider will come back to trails in the future, and they will have a good experience with us being good stewards to everybody on the trail. My experience being a mountain biker on the trails, when I approach a horse or I see a horse coming even from a far distance, I keep my eye on the rider. You can tell a lot from the rider of how comfortable they are with the bikes and the environment around them. It's kind of a judgment call, but I pull over, I make eye contact with the horse rider, I communicate, I say, hi, is there anything you would like me to do? And at that point, you can usually tell if your voice is helping calm the horse and the horse, is reading you as non-threatening. I get some horseback riders demand you stop. They get a little hasty, and I understand because I'm a horse rider, but they need to communicate a little better with some bike riders. I think the communication, like I said earlier, is key. You need to communicate with the rider. Is there something you want me to do? Should I get off my bike? Should I get more off the trail? Would you like me to pet your horse when you walk by? Would you like to stop? Would you like to talk? Can I pet your horse? There's a lot of things. I want the horses to feel at ease when they're out on the trails. I want the horses to know that every bike they come across, whether it's going by them fast or it's skidding or the brakes are squeaking, I want the horses to feel okay. And I think it's a big responsibility for bike riders to really take the responsibility to help with this transition and help with the multi-use trails. I want the horse riders to enjoy the trails as much as I am while I'm on my mountain bike. I don't want anybody to go away with a bad feeling of, oh gosh, today ruined my horse ride because I had this, mountain biker that just, wasn't listening to my needs or did something wrong. And I think bike riders really do want to learn, for the most part. I do believe that the responsibility on the multi-use trails does lie with the mountain bikers, all of us in a whole, but I would say only because the mountain bikes are faster, they're noisier, they're a little bit more of a flight mechanism for the horses, especially if, the speed and things come in. I think the responsibility is that when you go out on the trail, you need to be a good advocate for the horses and support them. It's a big responsibility to be out on the trail and to communicate. And I don't know if we can come up with maybe a mutual communication between horse rider and bike rider. Maybe it's a hand signal, maybe it's a gesture, I don't know. But I think right now, talking to one another and communicating what the rider and the horse needs to get them by safely is, I think, just going to be a real key component to making us all get along on the trail. All right, so in my horse riding experience in Auburn, we, in the last, I'm going to say probably 5 to 7 years, being the endurance capital of the world, we have a lot of ultra runners that have moved to our area, and they also come here to train, and they do training groups, whatnot. The ultra runners that are training for the Western States run are very fast. And in my experience on single track trails, especially the Roby Trail, trails where it's very overgrown, you're both out on a single track, and I've been out practicing for endurance, so I'm moving at a good speed, fast trot, and I've had ultra runners come up behind me. I can't hear them, but I can tell my horse is sensing that there's something behind. And I have found that I've probably had 3 or 4 experiences of this now where they're coming up behind you at such a fast rate, and they're breathing heavy, and their footfalls are very heavy. So what I've determined is, with my horse's reaction, they think it's something that is chasing them. And I've had a couple of experiences where my horse because my horse wouldn't have anywhere else to go but down the trail, and we pick up speed, and I try to get my horse back in. I've had to stop, let my horse look back at the runner that's coming. Once I let the horse see what it is, it's all fine. But it's another reactionary thing for a horse that they are not used to experiencing, this running, fast, huffing thing behind them. They know it's not a horse. Doesn't sound like a horse. So those instances have just kind of left me feeling a little bit by myself in terms of, have anybody else come into this new phenomenon? But it is something to be aware of out on the trail. The runners, they don't want to stop, I've found. They get very annoyed when they do stop, and they're trying to click their watch off and on because they've now just stopped for 3 seconds so they can get by us. It hasn't been the most pleasant experience, and I do wish that community would understand that when they're coming up on horses that it's causing a little bit of a problem. All they have to do is communicate. All they have to say is, "Hi, I'm coming up behind you. I just want you to be aware of it." And that would dissolve any flight response from my horse. My horse would go, "Oh, it's a human." They recognize human voices, and human voices are a wonderful thing when it comes to horses. If they don't know what you are, you just have to speak, and they instantly, "Oh, it's just a human." So that's been my experience with the ultra runners. I love them. They've brought a lot of business to our endurance capital of the world.